Okay, we're all ready. Hello, and welcome to Autistic Radio again, every Sunday for the 555 with Harry's Spectrum Voices, sponsored by coldpack.co.uk. If you need cryotherapy for your practice or as a person, go to coldpack.co.uk, and using them means we here at Autistic Radio benefit. Now it's over to you, Harry. What do we have on the Facebook feed?
Hello everyone, thanks Jules. Hello everyone, this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 12th of April 2026, and this is where we go through some of the posts that are on autisticradio.com Facebook page. And we always start with a poem that's shared. So the first poem, or the first post, we always start with a poem in this broadcast, which is called the 25th of November 1992. And it's from G.R. Robertson, who's also with us today. From the edge of the world, the sun rises dim by cloud, light embraced by glistening dew. A crow cries out and takes to wing. The silence retreats to other climes as the commuter belt trembles to life. Whistling postman, singing milkmen, as the clock ticks slowly by. I look from my window. Fingers lightly brush the glass. My reflection is face to face with what I must face this day. Strength don't fail me now. Today I bury my father. What's your thoughts?
Fucking hell. Fucking hell. That's intense, GR. Beautiful and intense.
Yeah, I have goosebumps on my face, my hands. I love minimalist poetry. This is gorgeous.
It is beautiful, and it actually brings back a memory of mine where one of my grandparents passed away in the same year. And what I was taken from it is you were looking out to how life is going on with other people, with how things are going on, but yourself is stuck in that particular moment. Of course, it's very different from a grandparent. Can be very different, or is normally, excuse the word normally, is very different when it's relating to a parent. But I just find it very powerful. And it's also very powerful because the poem was shared with me by email just after I'd been down at my dad's house for his birthday. And appreciating that time with them, that couple of hours I was down, and being aware that not everyone is so fortunate. So, yeah, it's very powerful and very good.
I'm actually quite blown away by this. And there's so much in it as I keep reading back. I love that sparsity, and I love that phrase when you're seeing your reflection back. You're looking through the glass, but then you're taking your focus back, and then you're seeing your own reflection in the glass, and you describe it as reflection. My reflection is face to face. And that feeling sometimes when you suddenly catch a different way of looking at reality. And the other thing, because it's bookended by today I bury my father, but you start with your feeling of being on the end of the world, with actually at a place where everything else from then on is an unknown place, the ocean going away from you at the end of the world, like I am here in New Zealand. I just was at the beach and I looked out and I knew that there was miles and miles of blue ocean of the Pacific, and I felt at the end of the world. And that feeling of being at the end of the world associated with that special day when you're burying somebody that is important to you. I think those bookended sentences really make a brilliant structure to this poem.
It's the first time I've shared that with anyone, but it's because it's true, and that was the day I buried my father, and I sent this one in because most of my poems are like the whale one, and I just wanted to show that there was another side to what I write. But if I send another one in, it will be definitely a lot more lighter than that one.
It doesn't have to be light. This, I don't know if you expected, because I know it's personal to you and it has so much meaning to you, but the meaning came through immediately. And as Jules says, reading it more, it just shows what a good poem it is. But I have rarely been moved by a poem as immediately and firmly as this one. And it has a universal heft, and you can send personal ones anytime.
Yeah, here. In the text, there's more quite personal revelations which have been shared, so I'll read what Robbie says here. His experience was, I was made to feel uncomfortable at my father's funeral. My sister and family got up and moved further away from me, and repeated when one of them got up to speak. And then he shares, after a little while, I found my father. When I touched his lifeless body, I knew he was gone. So we have an autistic man who is expressing that he had the experience of being the first person to witness the death of a loved one. And that's contrasted with how an autistic man has been treated by his family in the public space. He was a person who found his father when he was deceased and starting to cool, but yet his family, a few days or weeks later, lacked the empathy to reach out to Robbie. There's almost a poem in those two texts that are shared by Robbie. Thank you, Robbie.
Something that I just thought in relation to Robbie's comments was that he he was your lifeline.
My extended family's attitude toward me changed the day my father was gone. While he was alive, they pretended to care about me. My dad even believed it because otherwise he wouldn't have put them as executors to his will. They just abandoned me, just completely cut off once the will was dealt with.
My father's family never got in contact with me and my mother after he passed away. We lost contact with them. And about 10 years ago, the last of the aunts died, and I was just going to turn up just to sort of say, you know, I'm still here. But my mother said, don't bother with them. And I didn't. Although when one of the uncles died, they did actually track me down because the inheritance was split between his living relatives because he had no children. So they were honourable in some ways at the end, but I haven't really had it, except for a couple of emails. I've had no contact with him since. On my mother's side, I have two cousins who are very close with me.
I was going to say there's things we can't control, and these are some of them. I'm a wee bit curious though, GR, about when did you actually write this? Did you write this in the moment on that morning, or was it a wee bit later on?
The last two lines were strengths don't fail my father were in my and I'll have to check on the rest. Probably not straight afterwards. I carried the two lines around in my head for a long time, so it was probably not written down for probably 15, maybe 20 years.
I think if you have a poetic mind, they were probably there in the moment, because these intense moments are when we're extremely present, but because there's a lot of chaos around as well, it's not the most opportune moment to like take out a pen and paper and write things down. I remember when my friend took his life when I was 19. That night I went home and wrote a poem. It's the only time I've done that, I think. Although I did write one about my dad afterwards, after the day was gone and done. But I just got the impression you really got that moment in the morning, the vision of it, and the reflection of yourself bringing you back, yeah, from that full-on vision.
Well, on the Monday, a week before my uncle had died, and we were at the cemetery burying my uncle. The next morning, I went to work, and I was told my job was ending on Friday. And that night was we went to the care home and to see my father, and he passed away an hour after we left. And a week and a day after we buried my uncle, we were in the same cemetery on the next plot burying my father. So, and I'd lost my job as well. So there was a lot going on.
There was a glitch when you first answered Ray's question there, when your mute button kept clicking on and off. But I think we've passed it. So in the edit, we'll just try and the best we can. This poem is bringing out other people's experience of how they, as autistic people, were treated by their family. And I think there's a commonality here in that often it's the autistic person of the family that has these awful experiences. I turned up to my father's funeral, which had been purposefully arranged by my family at the most inconvenient time for me because I was a long way away and they knew it. And when I arrived, there was a man there who was a friend of my father. And when asking who I was, I said that I was the son of John, and he denied it. He took a grieving son, looked him in the face and said, "You're not his son. He doesn't have another son." And that's the experience often of autistic people. Excluded, ignored, pushed out, even at the most brutally challenging moments.
Jules, when you were first giving your feedback on this, I could hear that it brought up very immediate emotion. And I really appreciated that. And I think you're right. It flashed me back when you just said that to my grandfather's funeral when I was 13. He was one of my close people. And a relative said to me not to be too emotional because it would bother other people. I felt like my legs would give out. I couldn't believe the whole thing. It was so profound. Yes, I just think it's terrible the way people are treated when it's obvious from all of our reactions to our loved ones passing that we have so much connection and emotion. I don't know what they think of us sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're on mute if you're speaking.
What Ray asked when I wrote it, the last two lines were in my head the day we buried my father, and the rest of it probably wasn't written for 15, 20 years. It was just summing up that point in my life until it's one of those things where the words just bounce around in your head and you have to wait until they make sense before you write them down.
Yeah, it's almost like an anchor.
When my father passed away, my mother had just gone into a care home because she had dementia. I'd lost my job with COVID and I was going to lose my home.
When my mother fell ill, the council told me I would be out of the house in 4 weeks. And my mother wanted to sort it out, but she was in no fit state. She'd been in and out of hospital twice. She had brain and lung cancer. She was dying. And when she died, in some ways, I was happy that she didn't have to suffer anymore because the last year of her life, she'd lost she came from a family of 14. She'd lost her last sister. She only had a brother left. And we had to have the dog put to sleep. She had terrible problems with ulcers on her legs. Her health was all over the place. And the council told me when she died that I would be out the house in 4 weeks. And my mother wanted to sort it out, and I didn't want her to get involved because she was dying, and it wouldn't be right for her. She wanted, one day she said to me, "Will you take me to the council offices?" No, she said, "Will you take me to Lyndhurst? I want to go for a look around." I said, "No, you want to go to Lyndhurst because you want to speak to the council." And she got quite uppity. She said, "I want to go to Lyndhurst to sort the house out." And so I tried to pick her up off the bed, and twice I picked her up and she screamed in pain, and she soiled herself. And she said to me, "You fight for your home, my son. You fight for it." And then the doctor came and put her on a morphine injection, and she never spoke again. And I fought for, I'm not going in the full story because that's a podcast in itself. I fought, it took me 58 months for the right to stay in the home that I'd lived in for 50 years. But my mother told me to fight for my home. And my God, I fought, and it cost me a lot. It cost me a lot of my mental health. It literally destroyed me. But I fought and I won. And my words to anyone out there, sometimes there are battles that you can't win, but sometimes you can win, and sometimes you need to fight. So fight.
The next post is from Aurora Consulting. Disability Service Business Consultant. Aurora is an autistic-owned business offering organisations bespoke training and consulting based in Scotland. And they've shared a post called EBA Can Never Be Neurodivergent Friendly. And EBA, as we know, is Applied Behaviour Analysis. And the post says the following. Some EBA practitioners have started following me on a few different platforms in the last few days. One even described themselves as neurodivergent friend, despite not being neurodivergent themselves. As you can imagine, one even described themselves as neurodivergent friendly, despite not being neurodivergent themselves. As you can imagine, I have some things to say about that. ABA can never be neurodivergent friendly because it starts from a premise that we are wrong, that we need to change and be moulded into something different. ABA can never be neurodivergent friendly because it doesn't explore the why behind our actions. ABA can never be neurodivergent friendly because it's done to us rather than with us. Coerced consent is not consent. ABA can never be neurodivergent friendly because it doesn't respect our boundaries. Our no should always be listened to. ABA can never be neurodivergent friendly because it doesn't respect our sensory needs. NDY's Hub wrote a brilliant post recently on why sensory exposure therapy doesn't work and is well worth checking out. ABA was popularised by the same person who also popularised gay conversion therapy. ABA is sometimes referred to as an autistic conversion therapy within the community. Studies have shown a strong link between ABA and other forms of behaviourism and CPTSD, and that is as ineffective as other forms of conversion therapy. If you genuinely want to be neurodivergent friendly, we need radical acceptance that we will never not be autistic. We need connection over coercion. Aurora will continue to advocate for a ban on all forms of conversion therapy, including ABA. What's your thoughts?
All conversion therapy should be banned, simple as that, whether it's for autism or your sexuality or anything else, banned.
I fully agree that all conversion therapies should be banned. I agree with everything that Aurora has said, except we need to engage to change. And my experience of the lady behind Aurora Consulting is that her value at the moment is to continue to say these things so that they exist. And that's really valuable because around the world, ABA is what she says. However, we also need to have a conversation, because without us having a conversation with the behaviourist community, we cannot change it. And I have seen the tiniest slivers of hope in some individuals, rare individuals in the behaviourist community that might give us the opportunity to change what is happening. But whilst we depend on Aurora to continue with this single-minded, closed-off, prejudiced stance that there is only one version of ABA people out there, I think we also need to reflect that that's exactly the same as saying there's only one kind of disabled autistic person out there. So for me, and I hope for other members of Autistic Radio, we are willing to have long-form conversations with the people who are part of ABA. We need to talk to make changes, and I don't think just shouting will make changes. It closes people's minds. It's like the right-wing propaganda we get now, and we shouldn't be behaving like that. Autistic people should have the wherewithal to be able to think both sides and work it through and explain it to them. We can't explain it to them by standing and shouting at them.
It's an easy thing to do. Well, it's not easy. It's the most easiest it feels way to be or to do is be defensive. To be defensive by attacking, you feel like attacking back on something that's trying to, in your mind and other people's minds, it's trying to put you out, to make you extinct, basically. That's saying that what you are is wrong. To saying that you need to be treated to change you. So that's always going to give that sort of response. But as Jules has just said, that's looking towards the most extreme case of ABA. There's a certain version that does go along those lines. But there's other ones that say that they're not like that, they're neurodivergent friendly, They want to talk to the autistic people. They want autistic people involved, and it's about helping rather than trying to. And this, from what they've said, of trying to get rid of who they are. But you can understand this stance. But I can understand Jules' point, and I actually agree with it. It's like not everything's the same. And what Autistic Radio has done is it's spoken to people in ABA, and we've listened to some people who sound fairly inclusive and reasonable to an extent. And even if they weren't, see, just by shutting everything down, you don't get to know the full story because the story won't be told because you're telling them to shut up. So it's within autistic people's interests to dig and to find out what people are all about and then say to them, no, we don't agree with that, that's not on. But you've got to be fair in that process. So I totally get it.
And I would say that I don't know Aurora Consulting. I don't know the people, but I think that we're positioned to do that in the way that you both described because we lived quite a long time before we were diagnosed, some of us at about around the age of 60. And so our lifespan encompasses the history of these practices. And we pointed out in the last session at 444 when we were thinking about some of the skills we learned in life, like some of what I was able to do in life was as a result of behavior modification. But if it had been more modern, a happy balance, I would have had a better life. I don't agree with it. I think it is one of the worst things that happened to me, but in some ways I am capable of certain things, but I wouldn't say it's been good.
I think I might have been misunderstood because I agree with Aurora that at this point in time, there is no satisfactory attitude that I have come across from any ABA practitioner, barring perhaps one who is autistic themselves. She is absolutely right that the status quo at the moment is that ABA is abusive. You know, we have to start from that position. And those who feel that they're autistic friendly or neurodivergence friendly are fooling themselves, but they are on a path. They might be right at the beginning and they might be in fantasy at the moment, but that tiny little chink that they want to be is our opportunity to engage. And to just shout back at them, it's impossible to engage, is less than helpful. Aurora gets her kudos from the people around her by being the rock, the top touchstone of an idea of ban ABA, and she's not going to change from that. Her role is to be the immovable object, but we need other people around that to give some people a tiny chance of learning. That's all I want to say. She's right, but changing it does not come from stopping it change.
Yeah, Ray says in the comments, isn't society at times a conversion therapy? And what I'm taking from that comment is it seems, or it does happen actually, that people in society try to say, or do say, that what you're doing is wrong as an autistic person in terms of talking, communicating, doing something, routine, life. So I think that's what Ray's getting at. Or am I taking that the wrong way, Ray?
No, that's a fair assessment, Harry. I was thinking, I am neurodivergent friendly, and I was before my diagnosis. But then again, I'm not trying to, hurt or abuse people by putting them through a conversion process. Although, who knows, maybe I was to some extent by being part of something unfriendly. I think this is part of Autism Awareness Week, is it not? So people in the autism community or neurodivergent community are focusing on awareness as they do at this time of year. And my concern is, well, what is our awareness of autism? Because I read something weird this week that said there's no such thing as autism, there's just being autistic, which kind of doesn't make much sense, but there's a bit of it that intrigues me.
I don't feel like you could have accidentally been participating in it. I feel like I'm just going to call it behavior therapy. It is really, really, really obvious when it's happening to you, and it's really threatening and disturbing and painful. I'm just going to read from the comments. Ray went to pubs and acted normal. Yeah, I wonder, is that more asking?
Oh, that's I was going to respond to in the comments actually, because that's what I do. Well, I don't know if I do, but I certainly I think there was one time that I thought, right, just it was in my mind like don't behave like naturally, just walk in and come in with a straight face, and I think a lot of it's in case they think I'm too drunk or whatever. Because when I'm happy or even moody, it's very obvious because my emotions are all over the place. But when you said go walk into pubs and acted normal, that just sounds like something a lot of people do. Although what is normal? It's like going to a pub and act sober.
But masking is part of humanity. Masking is part of humanity. It's not exclusive to neurodivergent people. But what conversion therapies, and ABA is a conversion therapy in most situations, what they do is they teach how to mask, and they teach it in such a way that it becomes embedded in somebody that they then have to unpick later when they start to understand themselves more intimately. So that's the real trauma that it leaves. And I use the word trauma. I know trauma is used as a word everywhere now, but I believe that the hurt of ABA leaves this residual hurt in somebody, a trauma that they then have to deal with. There is the other issue that almost all professionals in autism that I have come across have some version of ableism in them that tells them that they are trying to lead us or teach us or make us be more like them for our benefit, even if they don't think they are ABA. Like Ray says, society to some degree is about teaching people to mask. It is a conversion therapy. society does not accept autistic people in their normal way. But the professionals in autism, the biggest profession in autism, has already grown, and that is the behaviourist movement. So we can't get all of those people removed. We have to engage with them to change them, because they're not suddenly going to decide that they don't want their jobs anymore and can be replaced by other people. That's not going to happen. It's already embedded. It's like trying to get rid of Christianity in America when there's a crusade going on.
Can I just add, it must be like a continuum, but when you're over on the behavioral side, they're trying to strip you down. The experience is like traumatic with a capital T, and they are breaking you down. And I it would be a whole podcast, so I won't go into it, but it's scary, and it's about reinforcement. You're not going to get reinforcement. You're going to be punished if you're acting autistic. And it's harsh, it's severe.
Interestingly, Aurora Consulting refuses to engage with me as a person, and so far with Autistic Radio entirely, and has done as much as they can to discourage people from using our service. And I find that sad. And I would love to reach out to Aurora Consulting, and as I've met and spoken to her before I even started the Autistic Radio project, to explain that I would be speaking with the ABA community. Please, Aurora Consulting, if somebody is listening to this that has any way of asking Aurora Consulting to engage with us so that she can explain this more and make a podcast to explain what she feels, we will do that for her. We will represent her completely authentically.
Next post is from Autistic Flair, who are a community page. Autistic Flair is an online community and resource hub dedicated to amplifying autistic voices to change perceptions of autism to create a more inclusive society. And they shared the following. They shared a picture from actress and model Julia Fox saying, "It's my autism, laugh out loud," responding to fans calling her fascinating for her random knowledge. And it goes on to say about autism. What gets labelled as random or useless knowledge is often anything but. Autistic people can have an amazing ability to deep dive into subjects that spark curiosity and have a natural pull towards detail, pattern, and meaning. There's a joy of collecting information, of remembering things others might overlook, of connecting dots in ways that feel almost instinctive. For autistic people, knowledge isn't always about practicality. It can be about comfort, creativity, identity. Those little facts can become anchors in conversation, ways to connect, or just something that brings genuine happiness in a world that can often feel overwhelming. What's your thoughts?
It's nice to see the word anchor again.
I was at the Autism Hampshire social group this week and mentioned podcasts, and they said, what do you talk about? And at this particular group meeting, one of the guys there decided to bring in some model soldier figures, which he paints, and do a model soldier painting demonstration. And I said, we talk about whatever we talk about. So if this person decided they wanted to talk about painting model soldiers, then we would talk about that. And then I did say, to go back to the subject a bit more, I did say I have to be careful if we start talking about films and TV and music, because I could fill up 10 podcasts on that alone.
Yeah, I mean, I love this post. I really do love it. Because I came out and been in conversation with a friend of mine who sadly is no longer with us, but this years ago when we were talking about football and football players, and I'd come out with these facts. Sometimes I'd even come out with the date of birth because I played a fancy football game which gives you the date of birth of one particular player, well, many particular players. And he was kind of looking at me as he wasn't looking at me strange or anything. He kept saying, "You're an expert. You know everything," sort of thing. And obviously, I don't, but I just found it quite comforting, even just talking away about these random things without being judged. It was like it seemed like the worst thing I got was, maybe too much, dare I say, kind of a compliment. But we've done it ourselves. We've actually done it ourselves in many ways. It's like we just if someone's interested in talk about their favourite subject, their favourite musician, favourite actor, favourite films, doesn't need to be any particular, but there's a knowledge there, and then just automatic all this information comes out that a lot of the time even amazes me. It's how do you know all this? And it's just to say that this isn't useless. It's not random at all, because if you're saying it's not random because it's specific to you, it relates to you, and it's not like it's nothing negative. Let's just say that.
Sometimes this ability to dive deeply. Oh, did I interrupt somebody? Sorry.
No, you didn't. On you go.
So it just so happens that this year, and I'm not going to go into it and be recorded about it, but the thing that I learned last year and really figured out because of the way I figure things out because I'm autistic now does make me an expert and helps people in a very important and essential way. So sometimes it's not just random, but I also think we can't help it if it's something we've been drawn to.
What I was going to say is that I used to go in the chip shop and the guy would say to me, "What do you know?" as a sort of hello. And one day I just came up with, I know a lot about a little, and I know a little about a lot, which I think sums it up for me.
We know ourselves so well.
It just kind of reminds me of the autistic stereotype that you see in media. Well, what I've seen in media, so it's a bit out of date in terms of what I've watched. 'Cause I don't watch anything kind of more recent, which may be more, reasonable and inclusive. It's like this guy's got autism, or this woman's got autism, this person's got autism, and they can come out with these facts and detail and great detail about certain things, or even everything actually, if it's exaggerated, and they'll sit and they'll go all over all these facts. And I think this kind of post is sort of relating to, because the way it's portrayed is like, oh, these are interesting facts, but they don't mean anything, they don't do anything. And it's just to say to people, well, it means a lot to you, and it might be, handy for some people. I know that some so-called random things that I've said is kind of even sparked a, inspiration.
We have a lovely comment from a LinkedIn user with lots of clapping hands and saying that they're going to steal this for their own small talk, which I think is a lovely thing. Hello out there. Hello, world. Thank you for listening.
The final post of this evening is from Thriving Autistic, who are a non-profit organisation, neuro-affirmative, non-profit, by and for the autistic and neurodivergent community. And they share the following. You cannot be neuro-affirming and supportive of autistic people without challenging racism, transphobia, and ableism. Acceptance is a beginning, not an end. This Autumn Acceptance Month, Thriving Autistic is calling for something deeper. You cannot support autistic people without challenging racism, transphobia, and ableism. Our lives don't exist in silos, and neither should our support. Every autistic person deserves justice and genuine belonging. We'd love to support you, your loved ones, or your professional practice. What's your thoughts?
I tend to agree. Yeah, plain and simple.
I shared this because I found that it shares an important message about including people, because it appears in this day and age, disappointingly, that a lot of people are excluded, and not just in an ignorant way, but in a really violent way, in a real sort of real negative way, for the want of having giving a better description. And it has to be said is you can't be inclusive in one way but exclusive in another. And I think there's so many people out there that are trying to drive the inclusion thing backwards, trying to say that some people don't deserve to be included. Some people just don't, it's not so-called normal, it's not right in their head, which is totally wrong. People should not be excluded. There's so many people out there that need support and deserve support. So that's my take on it. Any other thoughts before we finish? Well, thanks everyone. And thanks everyone for another great conversation tonight. We had a good discussion. We had real good in-depth, experiences from everyone. So thanks again. This is Harry's Facebook. for Sunday, the 12th of April 2026, which is part of the Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is every Sunday, 5:55 p.m. to 7 p.m. UK time. And we're always here and we're always welcoming. So thanks again. I look forward to doing the same next Sunday.
Now Harry's completed